Take the plunge and listen to Guernsey Deep Dive. Don't forget to like, share, and follow.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take stacks of sources, articles, research, our own notes, and boil it all down, trying to find the most important nuggets for you. Today, we're tackling a really remarkable story. It's about immense sacrifice, a unique identity from a place you might not immediately think of with the Great War. The small island of Guernsey.
That's right. It's quite something. Imagine an island, population just over 30,000 back then, and yet they sent 8,000 men to fight in World War I.
8,000.
Staggering, isn't it? And almost 1,500 of them never came back. It really shows the global reach of the war, and the huge impact it had, even on these tiny, tight-knit communities.
Okay, let's get into this. Our mission today is to unpack the story of the Royal Guernsey Light Infantry, the RGLI. A British Army regiment, but formed specifically from the Royal Guernsey Militia, just for WWI. We'll look at how they formed their brutal time on the Western Front and the legacy, the bravery, and sacrifice. We're using historical accounts, museum details, official records. You're going to hear some incredible stories.
It really is a unique viewpoint on the war, how loyalty and identity played out on such a micro level.
So 1914, Europe goes to war, Guernsey, fiercely loyal to Britain. The local Royal Guernsey Militia gets mobilized straight away, right?
Mm-hmm.
To replace the regular garrison sent off to France.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. Militiamen, they usually couldn't be sent overseas, could they? Their job was home defense. So how did Guernsey contribute fighters beyond just guarding the island?
Yeah, that's a key point. Because even before the RGLI itself existed, Guernsey was already finding ways. The states of Guernsey, that's their government, they acted, almost like a small nation in this. They offered trained groups of men to the British.
Okay.
So you ended up with 2 full infantry companies, a machine gun company too, joining the 16th Irish Division.
The Irish Division. Any reason?
Well, there was a bit of a joke, apparently, that Guernsey men were put with the Irish because, quote, neither could speak English properly.
Oh, right. Bit harsh.
Maybe. And also, a divisional ammunition column from the Royal Guernsey Artillery went off to the 9th Scottish Division. So the island was sending men, just not under their own banner yet.
That immediate commitment is striking. How does this fit into the bigger picture? Britain getting involved because of Belgium.
Yeah.
What did that mean for islands like Guernsey?
Well, the bigger picture was terrifying. Sarajevo, the assassination, then the dominoes falling across Europe, Germany invading Belgium, that pulled Britain in. Suddenly, it's a global war. And the casualties were like nothing anyone had seen. Lord Kitchener put out his famous call for volunteers, needing this massive new army, and this sort of relentless need for more men. It eventually created the space for places like Guernsey to form their own units.
Which brings us to the birth of this unique regiment, late 1916. The Lieutenant Governor, Sir Reginald Hart, he pushes for it. And the states of Guernsey decide, okay, we'll raise our own full infantry battalion for the British Army. The idea being Guernsey needed to be seen very clearly doing its bit with its own name on the unit.
Exactly. A statement of identity and loyalty.
So they suspended the Royal Guernsey Militia for the war, brought in conscription. This is a whole different level of commitment, wasn't it? Not just sending companies.
Absolutely. A major step. It showed how deeply they felt that connection and that desire to contribute directly. Most of the first officers and men, they were ex-militia. But later on, especially after the heavy losses started, drafts brought in civilians, even men from other regiments.
And they had a motto, DX ADs, Norman French, isn't it? God help us.
Yes, from the old Duke of Normandy's battle cry.
But some translated it more grimly, didn't they? Just literally, God help us. What does that tell you about their mindset?
I think it captures it perfectly, that sense of the immense task ahead, the grim reality they knew they faced. It's less a cry of aggression, more an acknowledgement of the odds, needing that divine help. Their training was all done locally at first. Fort Georges, L'Ancresse, Les Bocamps, digging trenches, route marches, bayonet drills, the usual stuff. There's a big parade, quite a poignant moment on L'Ancresse Common. They received their regimental flags sewn by the women of Guernsey.
Lovely detail.
Then, June 1st, 1917, the 1st Battalion RGLI marches down to White Rock, St. Peter Port Harbor, cheering crowds, waving them off. Then they sailed to England for more advanced training near Canterbury. Bourne Park Camp.
So after all that local prep, the emotional goodbyes, when did they actually head for the front and how did they get there? Those 40 and 8th trains, was that really how it was?
Yes, that was the grim reality. September 26, 1917, 44 officers, 964 other ranks sail for France. then packed onto those infamous 40 and 8, basically cattle trucks. 40 men or 8 horses.
Right.
Very. They were attached to the 29th Infantry Division. And here's a connection. It was commanded by a Guernseyman, Major General Beauvoir de Lille.
Yeah.
The 29th was a regular army division, but by late 1917, many originals were casualties. So these fresh Guernsey troops arriving. Probably a real morale boost for the veterans.
And they had a mascot, too, I read. Joey the donkey.
They did, little Joey. He went with them to England for training.
But not to France.
No, wisely, he went back to Guernsey before they shipped out. Joey wore this little coat with the regiment's battle colors.
What were they?
Initially green and white, later buff and blue. The soldiers wore patches of the same colors on their uniforms, for regimental identification. A small, charming touch amidst it all.
So Joey may be providing some long-distance inspiration. The RGLI were thrown into the thick of it pretty quickly. Where did they first face that real test?
That would be November 1917, the Cambrai Offensive.
Right, Cambrai. Famous for the tanks, wasn't it?
Exactly. The first time tanks were used en masse. Smashed through the German lines initially. A huge success, actually, with surprisingly few casualties at first.
And the RGLI, their first objective was 9 Wood. Bonif.
Yes, deep behind the German lines. And they took it, remarkably, with very few losses. Just 1 officer, 2 soldiers killed, 25 wounded.
A good start. But the Western Front. Easy victories didn't last long. What happened next?
Retribution. Swift and brutal. 10 days later, the Germans launched this massive counterattack. The RGLI were ordered south to hold a village called La Rouvette, just outside Masnieres.
And this is where it got really tough.
Ferocious, that's the word used. They lost the village, retook it, lost it again, retook it again. Heavy, vicious, hand-to-hand fighting. Bayonets, grenades, close-quarter stuff.
How long did that go on?
2 solid days. Their tenacity apparently aroused the admiration of all who watched them, but the cost.
Terrible, I imagine.
When they were finally pulled back, nearly half the battalion, 40%, were listed as killed, wounded, or missing, out of about 1,000 men.
40% in one action.
It's been called the end of a generation for Guernsey. You have to remember the scale. Hardly a family on the island was untouched by that single battle.
The end of a generation. That phrase really lands. Can you give us a sense of what that actually meant day to day for such a close community, losing so many young men at once?
Well, for Guernsey, it wasn't just numbers on a page. It was like a social earthquake. Every single family either knew someone or was related to someone killed or wounded at Cambrai. Think about the gaps in the workforce. Fishing boats, farms, shops. A huge shift in community life, and this collective grief that would just hang over the island for years, decades even.
Yeah.
It really throws into sharp focus the human cost of war on that very local level. Every name on the casualty list was a neighbor, a son, a brother.
It's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
We do have some accounts from the men themselves, don't we? Sergeant W.J. Lepoidevin at Cambrai.
Yes, Sergeant Lepoidevin. He talked about facing snipers at 9 Wood, capturing Germans, then getting hit by a bomb, wounded in the leg and thighs. And then, while being stretchered back near a canal bank, a shell landed right near him, hit the stretcher, but somehow he survived. Just pure luck, or providence as he saw it. One man's story among hundreds.
It's incredible survival. And Lieutenant E.A. Chapman, he wrote a letter, even after being badly wounded.
He did. Chapman lost his leg, needed amputation. But he wrote this letter praising his men, B Company. He talked about their pluck and endurance, called them as brave as lions, how he went over the top, dug in, didn't care a rat for shells or bullets or Huns. It's quite a testament, written right in the aftermath, despite his own severe injuries.
Just unbelievable courage. Now, after those losses at Cambrai, which were just staggering, the RGLI was actually threatened with being disbanded entirely.
That's right. The losses were so high.
How did they manage to stay together? And what did that mean for the unit's sort of identity?
It really came down to the lieutenant governor again, Sir Reginald Hart. He fought hard to keep the unit going, but it meant bringing in huge numbers of replacements. Lots of English soldiers, especially from the North Staffordshire Regiment. Even men from the Jersey Militia were drafted in.
So the makeup changed quite a lot.
Significantly. By 1918, about half the men serving in the RGLI weren't actually Guernsey-born. It shows how determined the leadership was to keep that Guernsey name alive, even if the faces within the ranks changed.
So they get these replacements, rebuild somewhat, and return to the front in 1918 to Ypres, Passchendaele, which has a reputation.
Oh, yes. The most unpleasant and unhealthy part of the Western Front is how it's often described. And for good reason.
What made it so bad beyond the actual fighting?
The conditions. Constant rain, shell-churned mud that seemed bottomless, trenches permanently waterlogged, sickness was rampant. Trench foot, dysentery, fevers, it caused almost as many casualties as German shells. It was this constant grinding misery, this daily threat, even when things were relatively...
It was relentless attrition.
Exactly.
Then comes April 1918, the German Spring Offensive. Ludendorff's last big gamble, right? After Russia pulled out of the war.
That's it. Germany trying to win before the Americans arrived in force. There was a major push, and a subsidiary attack hit the Lys area in northern France. And the German advance there actually broke through a Portuguese division holding the line.
So, chaos. How did the RGLI get involved?
They were part of the 29th Division, which was basically rushed into the gap to try and stop the bleeding, to stem the German advance.
Rushed in. Sounds desperate.
It was. They were hopelessly outnumbered, and the RGLI suffered appalling casualties again, an 80% casualty rate during the fighting retreat from Le Doulou back towards Maris.
80%.
80%. Just
Sure.
Devastating. But Field Marshal Haig himself, in his official dispatches, commended their gallant service. They played a crucial part, despite the horrific cost, in slowing the Germans down at a critical moment.
The numbers are just hard to grasp. Colonel de Havilland, the CO, he took 20 officers and 483 men into that battle at Lys.
Yes.
And by April 14th, just a few days later, he was down to 3 officers and 55 men.
That's all that was left standing. The RGLI was effectively shattered as a fighting force.
So what happened then? Was their war, their combat war, essentially over?
Effectively, yes. After Lys, what was left of the RGLI was pulled out of the 29th Division. They became GHQ troops.
GHQ troops. What does that mean?
General Headquarters troops. Basically serving administrative and security duties behind the lines. They ended up as guard troops for Field Marshal Haig's own headquarters at Montreuil for the rest of the war.
Quite a change from frontline combat.
A huge shift. King George V even passed through Montreuil in November 1918, accompanied by Haig, on a triumphant tour just before the end. Meanwhile, the Allies launched their big counterattack, the 100 Days Offensive, which pushed the Germans back and led to the armistice on November 11th, 1918.
And the RGLI.
Ironically, they were actually under orders to go back into the line right around then, but the armistice was signed just in time. Their war ended guarding headquarters.
Wow. So this incredible journey, this immense sacrifice,
Yeah.
what did it all mean for Guernsey, for the men who survived?
Well, the return home must have been incredibly bittersweet. May 1919, they sailed back on the SS Lydia, the remaining RGLI members. But as we said, hardly any family in Guernsey was left untouched. The impact was just profound, island-wide.
Let's just reiterate those numbers, because they bear repeating. Population around 30,000. 8,000 went to fight. 1,470 never returned.
That's roughly one man dead for every 4 who marched away.
And the island's population didn't get back to pre-war levels until the 1930s. What does that single statistic tell us about the long-term cost?
It speaks volumes about the demographic catastrophe for the island. Losing that many young men, the core of a generation, it affected everything long-term. Birth rates, the economy, the whole social fabric. It's a really stark reminder that for these smaller communities, the price of a global war echoes for generations in a much more concentrated way.
And specifically for the RGLI itself, the cost was immense. Out of 2,280 men who served on the Western Front with the regiment,
327 were killed. That breaks down to 230 killed in action or missing, 67 died of wounds later, 30 died of sickness.
plus 667 wounded,
Yeah.
and 255 became prisoners of war.
Yes. But like you said earlier, the wounds went beyond just those numbers.
The grievous wounds of both body and mind. Can you expand on that? What else did these men carry home? And how did medicine cope?
Well, physically, head wounds from shrapnel were incredibly common, even with helmets. The fear of poison gas was immense. It caused such horrific, slow deaths, and men suffered lingering effects, some dying decades later. And then the mental scars, what we'd now call PTSD or shell shock. Invisible wounds, but deeply damaging.
And medicine.
Medicine advanced rapidly out of sheer necessity. Nurses showed incredible toughness and resilience, and the war pushed forward research, especially in things like prosthetics, reconstructive surgery, blood transfusions, trying to cope with the scale of injury.
And back home, on Guernsey itself, huge changes were happening too. Women taking over men's jobs.
Absolutely. Banks, shops, they became conductorettes on the trams, working munitions factories, served as nurses, filling those gaps.
And dealing with shortages. Food, fuel.
Big challenges. It led to things like communal kitchens being set up just to make sure school children got fed properly. Society had to adapt in fundamental ways.
So it really reshaped Guernsey society.
Definitely. The war acted as an accelerator for social change. Women proved themselves in new roles, and the community had to pull together, finding new ways to support each other through immense hardship.
Despite everything, the RGLI were recognized for their service, weren't they? Medals, honors.
Oh, yes. They received significant recognition. Awards like the Companion of the Order of St. Michael and St. George for senior officers, military crosses for junior officers, distinguished conduct medals, and military medals for the ranks, even the French Médaille Militaire. And many were mentioned in dispatches, which was a significant honor.
And battle honors, too. What exactly are those for listeners maybe not familiar?
Battle honors are formal recognitions awarded to a military unit commemorating their participation in specific campaigns or battles. They get emblazoned on the regiment's colors, their flags. So honors like Passchendaele, Cambrai 1917, Elise, they were later officially granted to the RGLI's successor unit, the 1st Battalion Royal Guernsey Militia.
Right. And those colors hang in the town church in St. Peter Port today.
They do, a permanent reminder.
And the legacy continues in other ways, too.
Indeed. The RGLI itself was disbanded in 1919, but its traditions are carried on by the Guernsey Army Cadet Force. There's the Royal Guernsey Light Infantry Charitable Trust, formed in 2016 for the centenary. Memorials stand in France, near where they fought, and of course in Guernsey.
And that touching connection with Mesniers.
Yes, St. Peter Port was twinned with Mesniers, the site of that brutal fighting during Cambrai in 2019. A really powerful gesture cementing that historical bond forged in battle.
And if you visit Guernsey, you can actually learn more at the museum.
Absolutely. The Royal Guernsey Light Infantry and Militia Museum at Castle Cornet opened back in 2009. It's got some really compelling exhibits. A street fighting scene from Cambrai, weapons, uniforms, medals, including German ones picked up as souvenirs. There's even a graphic novel for children telling the story, plus letters, diaries you can listen to extracts from. It really brings the personal experiences to life.
Well, that brings us towards the end of this deep dive, the Royal Guernsey Light Infantry. A truly remarkable story, isn't it? A tiny island, a huge contribution to a global war.
It really is, marked by incredible bravery, resilience, but also just heartbreaking loss, and all while holding on to that unique Guernsey identity.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How much a place's identity, its very character, is shaped by the collective sacrifice of its people. How do the echoes of something so devastating keep resonating through the generations, especially in a closed-knit place like Guernsey?
Yeah.
What kind of strength does it take to rebuild after losing so much?
And that leads to a final thought, maybe. There's a poem, Norman 1000, by a Stanley Blick, written about the RGLI. It has lines. So young Sarnia died, but fame cast o'er their graves its glow, and honors wove about the name Norman 1000. Sarnia is the old name for Guernsey.
Norman 1000.
Yes. What does it mean, for a whole generation from this specific place to be remembered by that name, Norman 1000? How does that very local specific identity connect with the universal stories we tell
Thanks
about
for listening to Guernsey
sacrifice?
Deep Dive. Don't forget to follow for the latest updates. Any questions or queries, email guernseydeepdive@gmail.com.